You know that feeling you get when someone is standing behind you? That pressure on the back of your neck, the weight in the air, the instinct telling you to turn around even when you know no one should be there. That's the exact feeling that settled on me the moment the store's automatic lights shut off behind the security gate. The building became too quiet, too fast. The store was a huge retail warehouse, tall shelves, endless aisles, metal beams stretching up into darkness that the lights never fully reached. After closing, it felt abandoned, like all the noise that normally filled it had been vacuumed out in an instant. I was assigned alone to the stockroom that night. Short staff, sick call-outs, management cutting costs, everything that shouldn't matter until you're standing in a silent warehouse at 2:48 a.m., waiting for something to make a sound so you know you're not imagining things. The first hour was normal. Boxes, tape, scanners beeping, that constant hum of lights overhead. But around the second hour, I noticed something strange. The hum stopped. It didn't fade. It didn't flicker. It just went silent, like someone muted the whole building at once. I could hear my heartbeat. I could hear the crunch of the gloves in my hand. But most of all, I heard the faintest shuffle coming from the back of the stockroom. At first, it sounded like cardboard sliding. Then, like someone dragging their shoe. Then like someone dragging their feet. Slow, deliberate, weight shifting, as if someone was pacing, heel down, toe dragging behind. I leaned out of the aisle and listened again. The sound stopped immediately, not gradually, not like someone walking away. It stopped the second I stopped moving. I held still. 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then the shuffle started again, from the far left, a different aisle, same dragging pace. I called out, "Hello," expecting one of the other overnight workers to answer. No reply. I checked my phone, no alerts, no messages, no movement notifications from the front of the store. We had motion sensors, cameras, alarms. If someone had come in, something should have beeped or blinked, but the silent shuffle kept going, like someone wandering, like someone waiting. I tried to ignore it, focus on work, but after a few minutes I noticed something even worse. The lights in aisle 12 flickered on. Our stockroom lights were motion activated. They turned on only when someone walked beneath them, and aisle 12 was deep in the back, far out of my range, far too dark for bugs or dust to trigger. The lights came on, one by one. As if someone were walking down the aisle toward me, my blood went cold. I stepped back into aisle 10 and pressed my back against the metal shelf. The dragging steps grew louder, closer, a rhythm I couldn't unhear now. Drag, step, drag, step, drag. When the motion light above the final bend flicked on, I held my breath. I didn't blink, but nothing crossed into view. Only the sound remained. I forced myself to walk toward the monitor in the break room, telling myself I needed proof, anything to convince myself I wasn't losing it. The monitors were old, grainy, black and white feeds that covered the stockroom and portions of the aisles. The moment I looked at camera 4, my stomach twisted. Something tall moved between the shelves, not fast, not panicked, calm, smooth, like someone wandering with their hands brushing the racks. I replayed the clip. The figure wasn't detailed. It looked like a stretched shadow sliding across the aisle. But the worst part? It didn't follow the light pattern. The lights weren't turning on ahead of it. It moved in darkness like it didn't need the sensors. I radioed the shift lead. He sounded half asleep, annoyed, like I'd pulled him from a nap. He walked the aisles half-heartedly, checked the obvious corners, then shrugged. No one's back there, probably a rat or something. Rats don't walk upright, and rats don't show up 6 feet tall on a camera feed. But I didn't argue. It wouldn't have mattered. When I went back into the stockroom, the first thing I noticed was the pallet in front of me, sealed earlier, wrapped tight, sticker barcode applied. Now it was cut open, clean slit, center to bottom. The plastic had been peeled aside neatly, like someone had calmly unpacked it, inspected it, then walked away. I checked the box cutter I'd clipped to my belt, still there. The other workers were both at the front of the store. No one had come through the stockroom door. I began backing away without thinking, keeping my eyes on that empty, carved open pallet. That's when something knocked from inside the rack behind me. One single tap. I spun around and shined my flashlight into the gaps, expecting to see a box shifting, a rat tail, anything. But nothing moved, nothing breathed, nothing existed behind that rack except darkness that somehow looked heavier than the rest. I started hearing the steps again, this time all around me. The dragging sound echoed off the metal shelves, a slow circle, as if something was walking around the aisle I was in. I pressed my back against the shelf again, eyes darting from left to right, waiting for something, anything, to show itself. The dragging turned into faint thuds, bare steps this time, too soft for shoes, too heavy for an animal, too controlled for a hallucination. I whispered, "Stop." Not loud, not forceful, just desperate. The footsteps stopped instantly, and then something exhaled right behind me. A slow, human-sounding breath, close enough to move my hair, close enough that the warmth of it ran down my neck, but no one was there. No one. My legs went numb. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't shout. I couldn't move. When I finally turned around, nothing was behind me except an empty aisle and a flickering light. I didn't finish the palette. I didn't even pretend to try. I went straight to the break room and stared at the camera feed again. Camera 7, the one watching the long center aisle, glitched. It didn't freeze. It didn't cut out. It glitched like something was interfering with it. The screen flickered between static and a tall shape standing at the far end of the aisle. A head, shoulders, arms hanging low. The shape stood perfectly still for 5 seconds. Then, in the next flicker, it was closer. Another flicker. Closer. Another. Right at the end of the aisle, facing the camera dead on. The screen went dark. I backed away so fast I hit the break room table behind me. The shift lead came in when he heard the noise. He saw me pale, shaking, barely able to speak. When I tried explaining what I saw, he didn't roll his eyes this time. He just sighed like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You heard the walker." The way he said it was too casual, like it wasn't new. He told me overnight workers had been complaining about something pacing the aisles for years, something tall, something that didn't show up clearly on cameras, something that moved pallets, dragged its feet, tapped the shelves, breathed down people's necks. "And it always shows up around 3 in the morning, he said, "always for the person working alone." I quit overnights the next day, because whatever was walking those aisles wasn't a person, and the worst part? It knew I knew, and it wasn't hiding from me. It was waiting for me to turn my back again. You don't forget the sound of a clinic after hours. Not the daytime chatter, not the machines, not the rolling carts, the silence. It's a silence that feels unnatural, because medical buildings aren't supposed to be silent. They're supposed to feel alive, full of voices and movement. But after close, it feels like the whole place is holding its breath. The night everything happened started just like that. Just too quiet. The clinic stayed open until 9 p.m., and because I was the newest employee, I got stuck closing most nights. Sometimes I was alone for the last hour. I hated it, but I needed the job, so I learned to deal with that long hallway with motion lights that clicked on one at a time, always too slowly, always a split second behind where you actually were. It was 8:42 p.m. when I first heard the door chime. A soft ding, the sound the front door made whenever someone entered. We had already locked the door. I checked it myself. The security panel beside me still showed. No door opened. I stepped out from behind the counter and looked into the lobby, empty. The chairs sat in perfect rows. The water cooler hummed softly, but nothing had moved, except the clipboard. It was angled slightly, like someone nudged it with their hand. I stood still for a long minute, listening. The building didn't give me anything back, just the low hum of vents and the subtle creaks that came from cooling walls. I should have called someone. I should have taken it as the first warning. But I was tired, and I still had paperwork to finish. So I went back to my desk and kept typing. Not even 2 minutes passed before I heard the second sound. A hallway light flicking on, then another, then another. The motion lights were supposed to only activate when someone walked under them. They weren't the sensitive kind. They needed a physical presence. But now the hallway was lighting up one section at a time, in a straight line, as if someone were slowly walking toward the front desk from the back of the building. Except No one was scheduled, no clients, no staff, nothing. I watched the lights turn on until the final one remained just around the corner where the hallway opened into the lobby. I waited for someone to appear. No one did. I felt that same creeping pressure in the air I felt the night before, working a different shift. Like someone was standing just beyond the turn, watching me, waiting for me to get close enough. I stepped into the hallway slowly. The air back there was colder. Not AC cold, old building cold, like a basement. The treatment rooms were dark, their curtains hanging motionless, except one. Room 4's curtains swayed, just a little. A subtle rhythmic motion like someone brushing past it every few seconds. The vent wasn't running. Nothing was open. Nothing should have been moving. I stared at that curtain for so long I forgot to breathe. It stopped swaying as soon as I stepped forward. Completely still. Dead still. Almost like it realized I was watching. I backed away and went straight to the front desk. I grabbed my things. I decided I was done for the night, but as I was heading toward the exit, the door chime rang again. Ding! The door didn't open. The panel didn't flash. But the chime rang like someone had stepped inside. I heard footsteps then, slow ones, coming from the hallway I had just left. I didn't look, not at first. I kept my eyes on the glass front door, telling myself I was imagining things, that it had to be the building settling, a vent clicking, anything except footsteps. But when the footsteps reached the tile lobby floor, the sound changed. It wasn't the rubbery thuds of shoes. It was softer, like socks on tile. I turned around. No one was there. But the motion lights began turning off one by one now, in the opposite direction, starting from the lobby and going back down the hallway, as if someone had walked away. I stood frozen, staring into the darkening hallway. I waited for the farthest light to turn off again. When it did, something moved in the darkness just beyond it, a shape, tall and bent slightly, like someone leaning forward, listening. I moved toward the desk without turning my back on it. I grabbed the phone. I didn't even know who I intended to call. I just needed another voice. But before I could dial, the clinic printer near the filing cabinets suddenly whirred to life. It printed one page, just one. The paper slid out slowly, as if the machine itself was hesitant. I didn't want to walk toward it, but something in me needed to know, needed to see, needed proof that I wasn't losing it. I picked up the page. It was blank, completely blank. I dropped it immediately. It drifted to the floor and slid across the tile as though pushed by someone walking past me. Then the smell hit me. A faint, stale, hospital-like smell. Old antiseptic, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. It came from the hallway. I finally forced myself to look again. The last motion light, deep in the hallway, was flickering. Not turning on fully, just flashing in short bursts, like someone was standing right underneath it, blocking and unblocking the sensor over and over. I stepped backward toward the door, keeping my eyes locked on the hallway. The curtain in room 4 began swaying again, slow, rhythmic, like breathing. The light flickered one last time and stayed on. Someone was standing there now, a figure at the very end of the hall, not clear, not detailed, just a vague human shape, unmoving, facing directly toward me. Tall, lean, shoulders slumped slightly forward. I couldn't see a face, I couldn't see clothes. It looked almost like an overexposed shadow, too bright at the edges, too dark in the center. I whispered, "Who's there?" The figure didn't move. I took one step backward. The figure took one step forward. It didn't walk. It didn't shift. It just appeared closer, like a jump cut in a horror movie. I stumbled, hit the counter, grabbed it to stay upright. My heartbeat was slamming against my ribs. The figure flickered again. Closer. Now in the middle of the hallway. The lights behind it went out again, plunging the rest of the hall into darkness, except for the single light buzzing above it, and then the clinic filled with sound. Not talking, not breathing, not footsteps. A long, dragging exhale, like someone who had been holding their breath for years. I bolted for the door. I didn't set the alarm. I didn't shut off lights. I didn't even bother turning the deadbolt. I ran into the parking lot, keys shaking in my hand. When I finally got into my car, I looked back at the clinic through the windshield. The hallway lights were turning on again, one by one, heading toward the lobby. Someone was walking toward the front door, but no one came out. I didn't work a night shift again. I wasn't the only one who saw something, not according to the other staff, but I think I had the worst encounter. The last patient, they call him. A man who died in the clinic decades ago during treatment. A man who supposedly still walks the hallway looking for the room he never made it out of. And the terrifying part? He only ever appears after closing, and he only appears to people who are alone. And that night, I learned something else. He hates being ignored. I always thought staying late at the office was peaceful. Most people hated it. The silence, the hum of electricity, the way the hall lights went half power after 9 p.m. But for me, it meant no ringing phones, no walk-ins, no coworkers hovering over my shoulder. Just the soft click of my keyboard and the feeling that the whole place belonged to me. That changed on a Tuesday night in November. I remember glancing up from my computer and seeing the clock on the wall read 11:14 p.m. I wasn't supposed to stay that late. Management had made it clear nobody should be in the building after 10 without approval, but I was behind on reports, and honestly, nobody checked. The office floor around me was empty. Cubicles dark, monitors off, chairs pushed in neatly. The kind of quiet that amplifies every little sound. The soft buzz of the exit sign, the low groan of the air vents adjusting, the occasional rustle as the building settled. I rubbed my eyes, saved the file I was working on, and stood to stretch. That's when I thought I heard footsteps. Not close, not loud, but distant, like someone walking down the opposite end of the floor. I froze. The cleaning crew didn't come on Tuesdays. Security did rounds on the hour, but that wasn't for another 30 minutes. Nobody else should have been here. I leaned out of my cubicle and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the building. This place was nearly 20 years old, and the ventilation system sometimes made noises like movement. So I sat back down and kept typing. But then I heard it again. Soft, slow, steady, footsteps coming closer. This time I pushed back from my desk so fast my chair rolled into the cubicle wall. I stood holding my breath and peered down the main aisle of the office. The lights were dimmed to energy-saving mode. Only every third ceiling panel glowed, leaving long strips of shadow across the carpet. I didn't see anyone, but I felt watched. Against my better judgment, I called out, "Hello? Anyone up here?" My voice sounded too loud in the dark. No answer. I grabbed my phone, dead of course, and set it on the charger. While it powered back on, I told myself I was being stupid, tired, stressed. Then, from the far end of the office, one of the motion sensor lights flicked on. A single square of bright white in a long hallway of shadows. Motion sensors don't go off for no reason. My heart kicked up. I slowly stepped out of my cubicle and started toward the hallway. There was a corner just before the lit area, so I couldn't see who or what had triggered it. The carpet muffled my footsteps, but every fiber of me felt like I was walking straight into something I wasn't supposed to see. When I reached the corner, I leaned just far enough to peek around. The light was still on, but nobody was there. The hallway was completely empty. I exhaled, shaking my head. Maybe the sensor was faulty. Maybe a moth flew by. Maybe I was letting my imagination run wild. I turned to go back to my desk and froze mid-step. Because the last row of cubicles, the row I'd just walked past, now had a light on. A motion sensor light, one that hadn't been on 30 seconds earlier. I hadn't heard footsteps that time. I hadn't heard anything. A cold wave rolled down my spine. I took a single step backward, eyes locked on the glowing cubicle aisle. Then, behind the cubicle walls, something moved. Not a full figure, not a head, just something. A dark shape passing behind the frosted upper panel of the cubicle divider, where you could faintly see silhouettes when someone walked by. Only this shape didn't look like a person. It was too tall, too smooth. Its edges were wrong, rounded but sharp at the same time, like a shadow with depth, and it was standing completely still, facing toward me. I stumbled away from the corner, heart thundering so hard it drowned out every sound in the room. I didn't want to turn my back, but I needed to get to the exit. 5 cubicles. 4, 3. I kept my eyes locked on the one where the silhouette had appeared. No movement now, no shape. But the feeling of being watched dug into the back of my skull. 2, 1. I made it to the main corridor and broke into a fast walk, just short of a run, because some stupid part of me believed that running might draw attention. I reached the elevator lobby. The security camera in the corner stared down at me, a useless reassurance. I jabbed the call button. The light flicked on, the elevator hummed somewhere above, and then, behind me, deep inside the office floor, every motion sensor light turned on at once. Not in sections, not gradually, all of them. A wave of white flooded the entire office, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, fast, heavy, closing the distance. I slammed the elevator button again and again. Come on, come on, come on! The footsteps were getting closer. I could hear them pounding on the carpet, unnaturally rapid, like someone running using more than just 2 legs. The elevator dinged. I spun toward it. The doors opened. Darkness, total pitch-black darkness inside the elevator car, like the lights inside had died. I backed away instinctively. No way was I stepping into that. The footsteps were nearly at the entrance of the corridor now. I looked toward the stairwell, my only option. I sprinted. I shoved open the stairwell door, stumbled inside, and let it slam shut behind me. The echo thundered down the concrete shaft, and something slammed into the other side of the door a split second later, hard enough to rattle the metal. I gasped and jumped back. A second impact hit the door, louder, stronger, then a third, this one accompanied by the sound of something scraping down the metal, like long fingernails or claws dragging slowly, deliberately. I bolted down the stairs, 3 flights, 4. I didn't stop until I reached the ground level. I burst through the lobby doors, nearly collapsing on the polished floor, but I didn't stop moving until I was outside in the freezing night air. Only then did I turn back. The lobby windows reflected nothing but the empty desk and rows of chairs. No movement, no figure, no lights flickering behind the glass, just stillness. I didn't go back inside. Security found me sitting on the curb 20 minutes later, shaking uncontrollably. They checked the building, every floor, every stairwell. They found nothing. But the motion sensors on my floor? According to the system logs, they had all triggered in sequence, too fast for any human to move through. And one note, between 11:12 p.m. and 11:17 p.m., the elevator car lights shut off for exactly 5 minutes. No electrical reason, no power surge, no maintenance scheduled. I quit 2 days later. The building still stands. People still work there. But sometimes, late at night, employees report seeing motion sensor lights flicker on at the far end of the office, or hearing distant footsteps when they're here alone. Management insists the place is perfectly safe. But I know what chased me, and I know it wasn't human.